All right, I'm going to start. So my name is Sharon Myers, and I'm one of the nurses here. So happy to see all of you here today. Since this month was kind of focused on cancer, Linda asked me to give a talk, and I'm really always interested in psychosocial and emotional issues around all sorts of things. So I thought I'd talk about the emotional issues and the psychosocial issues around cancer. And I'm having been a cardiac nurse for most of my years, I knew a lot before this lecture about all the psychosocial issues that have to do with cardiac disease. But I didn't know much about cancer and oncology. But once I started researching it, it's pretty much the same. Similar type of psychosocial issues. And we're going to talk about those today. And then we're going to talk about what helps. So as you're listening to this, you know, some of you may have had cancer, you may have cancer, but pretty much everybody knows somebody who has cancer. So you can listen to this lecture with the idea that you're listening for yourself or for other people, because we always end up in, I have a friend right now who was just recently diagnosed with cancer, and he called me up to tell me about it. And I said, you know, would you like me to follow up with you? And he said yes. And I realized when I was writing this talk that I have not followed up with him. And that's probably the most important thing, is to follow up with people and give support. So. This one? Oh, this one. I don't have to do that whole thing, do I? Oh, okay. All right. So just to start out, you know, nobody's ever ready to hear the word cancer. It's immediately you feel uncertain about what your future's like, and that uncertainty, you know, doesn't end. Even once, you know, if you're lucky to be in remission, you're still feeling some uncertainty about that. And it affects everything, you know, how you feel about yourself, the kind of feelings you have about friends and family members, your work, your leisure. Sometimes it can slow everything down where you feel like you're not able to do anything. Sometimes you feel like you need to speed up so you can get some stuff done that you've always wanted to do. So it changes the way that you live your life. And people describe it feeling like they've been punched in the stomach when they hear the word cancer. It's always shocking. They feel stunned. Sometimes they feel like immediately it's hard to breathe. It's hard to hear, like I'm in a tunnel. And the room feels like it's spinning. So it's very shocking to hear that. So what am I doing here? I'm something wrong. Next, but then I just press that, don't I?
The other side.
The left side? Okay, all right. So just to start out, these are some of the psychosocial challenges that are related to the diagnosis of cancer. And I just wanted to say, if you're thinking of yourself or if you're working with other people, the needs and issues that people are going to experience vary depending on kind of what stage they are with the cancer. So there's the pre-diagnosis period where people just may have some sort of medical issue. They may have stomach pain, difficulty breathing, trouble urinating, and they don't quite know what's going on. And sometimes it takes a while to work through the medical system and get a solution. So during that time, it's kind of the pre-diagnosis stage, and people are feeling some anxiety and worry, sometimes a little isolation, because they're just kind of tired of talking about it, tired of worrying about it. And they just sometimes you tend to just want to get on your own. The post-diagnosis, after you've been diagnosed and the treatment, there's all sorts of things to worry about then. Worrying about the treatment, the side effects. It feels surreal to actually be moving forward in this direction. Once you start treatment, you really have to face that you have cancer and that you're in the middle of it. And then trying to understand test results. I had a friend that had cancer who was a nurse, and she was working throughout her whole cancer process, and she was struggling to get test results, and she didn't understand some of them. She couldn't get her medicines. You know, there's all sorts of things that people go through that pile on top of just being worried and concerned about the diagnosis. And then, of course, we worry about how the cancer diagnosis will affect family, work, and other responsibilities. And then after treatment, you're done, but you're worried about, what is it going to come back? Do I need more treatments? If it comes back, is it going to be worse? All those kinds of things. And then long-term after treatment, do I make long-term plans? Can I enjoy myself knowing that it may come back? You're kind of still kind of in a little limbo state. So some of the things that cancer can affect, and I also would say if you have heart disease or any kind of chronic illness, these are the things that those long-term illnesses can affect. So your self-concept, you've gone through life, you've kind of felt like you're this strong, you are the strong person, that you've handled most things, and then all of a sudden you get this whammy of something that is a chronic disease that sometimes you feel like you have very little control over. So it can change your sense of who you are in this world. And it's a little bit of a struggle to kind of get that self-concept back and readjust things so that you feel like you have a strength and that you have a way to work through this. It can be confusing and you feel like you don't know where to stand on the ground. If you have treatments which affect your body in any way, or sometimes you have, colostomies put in, urinary type things, it can affect your body image, loss of confidence in your body. And also you lose confidence in your body's ability to take care of itself, because all of a sudden it's kind of betrayed you. So it's like, whoa, how did that happen? Because of all that, a feeling of the biggest thing that people face with this and with heart disease and with other things is a feeling of a loss of control, feeling powerless, and then that leads to a feeling of hopelessness. So that's, I'd say, of all the things, that's probably the biggest thing that, if you have cancer yourself, or if you have friends or you're working with somebody, that's probably the biggest thing to kind of help work them through. Sexual dysfunction, because you have fatigue. Some of the chemotherapy may affect hormones and your libido. You may have scarring. You may have all sorts of equipment. So obviously it's going to affect your sexual abilities and desire. Change in social relationships. You may, have been, maybe your social world revolved around, going to school or playing bridge or coming here. And then all of a sudden you're getting radiation or chemo, and you really you only have the energy to get there, and you can't get out and do those things again. And so you end up losing friendships and the people that brought you joy. So a change in relationships, isolation, and then all of that leads to emotional distress. Sounds kind of dreary, but we're going to get to the good part. I have this kind of reactive airway thing going on. I'm not sick. I've taken a COVID test twice. But when I talk and I try to talk loud, it makes it worse. So these are some of the psychosocial or mental health issues that people can experience with cancer and with other chronic diseases. Depression, anxiety. If you have kind of chronic anxiety, you can also have periods of panic disorder. We're going to talk about these in more depth. Post-traumatic stress disorder, where you just have that feeling that something's bad's going to happen. Certain things can trigger you to be anxious, even after that event is not happening anymore. Of course, bereavement for your previous life. And some people have guilt about getting cancer. We'll talk about that more. Along with this can come periods of anger, loneliness, and a big one can be difficulty concentrating way after, you've finished your treatment. So we'll first start talking about depression with cancer. Of course, feeling sad after and afraid and anxious after you've gotten a cancer diagnosis is extremely common. Although when it happens to us, we feel like we're the only ones that it's happening to. We feel badly about burdening people with it, but it's very common. It's a natural response to loss and disappointment. So helping people feel and realize that this is normal, that if you weren't feeling this, you wouldn't be normal. You may be grieving the way cancer has changed your day-to-day life, your body, and your future. Depression was found in 25% of individuals with cancer, and that's much higher than the general population, which is 8.1%. The rate varies depending on the type of cancer. I didn't put it in here, but also because there's too much on the slide, the rate also varies with your age. Younger people, when I say younger, I mean less than 60, tend to have greater periods, because I'm older than 60, so everybody is younger. But people in the older categories do have depression, but less depression than younger people. I feel like when we get to this point in our life, we have a little bit more wisdom, and I don't know, everybody's different, but and I'm guessing nobody really knows why older people have less depression, but they do. And it varies with the type of cancer. So you can see pancreatic cancer and breast cancer look like they have a little bit higher rates of depression. And if you do have depression, it's found to be a significant predictor of dying, having a higher mortality rate. So 26% greater mortality with depressive symptoms, which means you just have kind of moderate depression, and 39% greater mortality if you have a major depressive episode. And those categories can be found if you're taking a depression inventory test to see. However, this is kind of interesting. Depression is not associated with a faster cancer growth. So if you're feeling down, it's not necessarily going to cause your cancer to grow faster. The next thing we're going to talk about is anxiety in those with cancer. Anxiety is what we feel when we're worried or tense or afraid, usually about things in the future. You know, we're ruminating, we're thinking about this could happen, this could happen, this can happen. And when we're thinking in the future, it also puts it in a place where we have less control over it because it's just out there. Anxiety in people that have cancer was 24%, and in those in the general population, 12.5%, so much higher in the cancer. So all these things are important if you have a friend or something, because, it puts it in perspective and you can realize, oh, that's why they're kind of agitated, or that's why they're more angry, or that's why they don't want to go and do anything because they're depressed. So it's a common occurrence. If you have prolonged and persistent anxiety, you can also develop an anxiety disorder, which is something where instead of just reacting to a specific thing that happens, like you forgot to take your pills and that makes you more anxious, you just kind of have this feeling all the time like something bad is going to happen, and you don't have any control over it. So it's kind of this persistent long-term feeling that you just kind of carry with you. And some people may have panic attacks, which is the sudden episode of intense fear or anxiety associated with physical symptoms. So an anxiety attack, you'll feel your heart racing, you'll feel more short of breath, you may be sweating. It could happen when you're in like an enclosed space, when you're having a medical procedure, because when you're having those things done, there's a greater surge of like your epinephrine and your stress hormones, and that can trigger that if you're already running around with this low level of epinephrine surging through your body all day long. And then you have something that's a little bit more stressful, it could trigger a panic attack. Usually short episodes, but can reoccur. And these are all of these things, anxiety, depression, are things that you can get help with. This is the time to really support people, to talk to somebody and get help of a professional, see a therapist that's trained in these things, because it is so helpful to get support. Loneliness, one of the biggest things that can happen when you have cancer, or heart disease, or any kind of chronic illness. You can feel, isolated, even if you have people around you who are there and helping you, because you still feel like they don't quite understand. I'm really, other people are helping me, but I'm really alone with this, facing this. So you can feel lonely. Your family and friends, they're there to support you, but they have trouble understanding exactly what you're going through. They themselves are having difficulty coping with the cancer diagnosis. And we talked about earlier, because you're not socializing as much, because you're feeling more tired or depressed or anxious, that causes you to just isolate and not be around other people. Even without cancer, 1/3 of people over age 45 experience loneliness. Isn't that interesting? 1/3 of people. And then add cancer on top of that. Wow, big double whammy, isn't it? Loneliness raises the risk of premature death as much as smoking or obesity, 2 to 3-fold increase. And with heart disease, I remember they did a study on what social isolation and loneliness, the effect that it has on your chance of having a heart attack. And it increased your chance fourfold. It was right up there with high cholesterol, diabetes. So huge, huge impact from loneliness. And then guilt and blame. You know, when people get cancer, the first thing we all think is, you know, why me? You know, have I not lived a good life? You know, am I being punished? Or was it because, you know, I smoked in my 20s when I was in college? You know, it's a blaming, it's a dumping on to try to figure out why, you know. So you may feel angry at yourself, you may feel angry at your family, at health professionals, kind of the world. You know, it's overwhelming, and you're trying to hold it. When something like this happens, you're holding all of that fear and anxiety, right? And sometimes you just can't hold it anymore. And what do we do when we can't hold something anymore? We just start dumping it on other people, right? Even if we don't mean to. I mean, we usually don't mean to, but it's just so much to hold, you know. It's important to remember and to remind other people that nobody deserves to have cancer. That's not what it's about. And we many times don't know why we get cancer. We're learning more and more about it every day. We just had a lecture from Dr. Lopez on plastics, right? We didn't know about those plastics. Difficulty concentrating. This was a study that was done by the National Health and Nutrition Examination Survey, and they evaluated individuals with cancer of all types were included. They were 8 years out from their original diagnosis. Cancer survivors had a 38% increase odds of self-reporting problems with their concentration compared to participants without a history of cancer. Difficulty concentrating is often associated, which means that sometimes it's secondary to depression or anxiety. So, and it's very common after cancer to continue to have some depression or some anxiety with not quite knowing how your life is going to go. And if you have difficulty with concentration, you know, what does that cause? It could cause you from not take your medicines correctly, not keep appointments, follow up with some plans that you've made, difficulty maintaining work and friendships. So it affects all areas of life. So before we start talking about what helps, these are just some things that I came across, what doesn't help. And we all, you know, try to talk and help to people. We don't quite know what to say, but and sometimes we're curious and we ask these questions like, well, did you smoke or drink? Just because we're curious, but that's not a good question because once again, they're already probably blaming themselves, right? So we don't want to lay on any more blame. And then saying, I know how you feel, you know, likely you don't quite know exactly how they feel. So you know, a good question is, I'd like to know how you are feeling, you know, because I don't quite understand. I'd like to hear more about it. Saying things like it could always be, well, it could always be worse. Well, you know, maybe it couldn't. I don't think. And then, you know, trying to comfort. My neighbor had the same thing and she's fine. That's kind of discounting, you know, what's going on with them. You have no idea whether this person's going to be fine. And also, if they've just gotten the diagnosis of cancer, I mean, they have no idea if they're going to be fine. Nobody has an idea if they're going to be fine. And saying everything happens for a reason. Once again, that's kind of dumping on, there's a reason for this, that you got this. And saying you'll be fine. It's once again, it's just a little detached kind of not aligning with them feeling that it gives. At the same time, with all these things, do not be so afraid of saying the wrong things that you do not call or visit. Because even if you just, we're going to talk about what to do, but even if you just call and say, I'm just checking on you, you know, that's the most important thing. So I know sometimes we don't go and talk to somebody that has cancer, has a new chronic condition because we feel like don't know what to say. So just decide before you go that you're just going to be with them and listen to what they have to say. So what helps? You know, I'm not going to go through this whole slide, but it can be different at different points. So it's different depending on what stage of cancer you're in. And also there's all sorts of individual characteristics. I told you age makes it a difference whether or not you have depression or not. You know, your gender, all sorts of social and cultural factors play into what is helpful to people. The way that people psychologically respond to this there's all sorts of reasons that they could respond differently. Different cancers have different characteristics. They're going to have different symptoms, different outcomes. So just, this not anything for you to take notes on or anything, but just something to keep in the back of your mind is that people are all, including yourself if you have cancer, are going to react differently. And how you react is not a fault of yours. There's so many characteristics that come into play. And so however you're feeling or however you're getting through the process, that's the way you're getting through the process, and where you are is okay. That's what I want you to get from this slide. So what helps? And this first slide is just some kind of questionable things. Does information seeking help? I know that I'm a person that feels better if I have all the information that I could have and then some, right? But I have found from being a nurse for years that not everybody wants to hear all the details of their heart problem. It's overwhelming and they don't want to hear it. They want to know one or two things and then they want to go on with their life. So that's important to keep in mind, that everybody's different. And, you may go to help somebody and you may say to them, well, I brought you this information that I found on the internet or that I got from my doctor, and that may be overwhelming to them. So once again, checking in, seeing what's helpful for someone. Is it helpful to share your diagnosis with others? Once again, that's different for everybody. Some people like to share on Facebook and Instagram, and it's helpful to them because they get responses. They feel like it's out in the world. They're not alone. Other people do not want to share. That feels, once again, overwhelming. It feels like an invasion of their privacy. They don't want you telling anybody about it. So keep in mind, once again, everybody's different. Looking at the bright side, should we encourage, should we say, oh, you're strong, you're going to get through this? Encouraging them to look on the bright side, glass is half full. First of all, not everybody is a glass half full person, and they get through life just fine. Some people get through life by being a glass half empty person, right? And they're just fine. They're not miserable. That's just how they view the world, and it works for them. So trying to get somebody who's not in a positive frame of mind, number one, and also is a glass half empty person, trying to get them to say positive things is not going to be helpful. So I had a whole slide on this. I forgot I had this whole slide. Just thinking positively help. Just in general, it's a common belief that you have to stay positive when you have cancer because, that'll help you get through this. But putting on a brave face all the time for everybody, you end up taking care of everybody else, right? And not yourself. And it can feel very draining. The reality is that cancer throughout the whole process and even after is unpleasant, frightening. So it's okay. It's okay not to feel great about that. You do not have to feel pleasant about that. The pressure to be positive can cause people to feel like they can't reach out because they're not supposed to be feeling down. They're supposed to be feeling positive, and that they're doing something wrong if they don't feel positive. And it keeps them from, seeing a therapist or reaching out to you or other friends for support. It's okay to have whatever feelings you're having. You are not hurting yourself by having your feeling. That's the key from this whole slide. You are not hurting yourself by having whatever feeling you're having. Activities and support that may help. So exercise. Well, I put that number one on the list because not only does exercise, study after study has showed that it helps your immune system, which what do we need when we have cancer? We need a good immune system, don't we? So exercise, if you can, they encourage people to continue to exercise throughout their cancer treatment if they have enough energy to do so. And even just moving in some way is helpful for your immune system. Also, exercise all by itself, if you don't have cancer, just exercise all by itself is as effective as medicine for mild to moderate depression. So it is helpful if you're going through a cancer diagnosis to continue exercise if you can. Some people find that meditation or prayer, depending on your spirituality, can be helpful. Yoga, because it's kind of a slow centering type of practice. And Tai Chi, I didn't put that on there, but definitely Tai Chi. laugh therapy. Linda usually, she was going to do it this month. She usually gives a talk, which I haven't heard in years, on laughter, which have you guys heard that? Yeah, it's a great talk. She said she's going to give it again soon. Pet therapy. I know when I'm feeling sick, I have a dog, and that's one of the best things is just to sit with your pet. And when my daughter was doing her bat mitzvah project, that's what she did is she borrowed our little neighbor's dog, which was so friendly and just loved to sit on people's lap. She took it and she went to a senior care center with the dog once a week and just brought the dog around, and dog sat on their laps, and oh, they just loved it. It was wonderful. Music therapy. I know the karaoke thing has kind of been a little therapy for me. I really like that Noah did and is doing. And then keeping track of and expressing your feelings. I'm not a big journal person, but sometimes, and especially for some people who do like to write, that can be very helpful, writing in a journal, reading poems, and of course, seeking counseling, joining a support group. And I didn't print this out for everybody because I think it's 19 pages long. But I was amazed. I looked up the support groups and resources for people with cancer. It's huge here in Sacramento, and I'll put these out. I'll just pass this around now. Maybe you could, Robin, could you just maybe just put one on each table, maybe, or something, and that you guys can just pass it around. But there's support groups for every kind of cancer, support groups for children, support groups for caregivers and family members. A lot for breast cancer, but every kind of cancer. So there's even support groups for smoking after you've quit smoking and you want to be in a support group to continue to quit smoking. And guess who teaches that? Have you guys met Carrie Shulkin? She runs that support group. Yes.
Can you make that an attachment?
Yes, good idea. Yeah, I will. Yeah.
Thank you.
Uh-huh. And we can, if anybody wants to take one of these, go ahead, because we can make more copies of these. So if you know somebody that would use this, or if you would use this yourself, don't leave here without one of those today, because we can make more copies of that. But just go ahead and take one if you want it, because we don't need 3 of them here for sure. And we can print out more. So making a plan, and that's easy to do with a friend, even when you're sitting there. You don't, march in the room and say, well, let's make a plan. But, if you sat and talked for a while, just, asking them simple questions like, how are you feeling today? And have you thought about some things you'd like to do today? That's a plan. That's a plan right there. And having a plan is looking into the future, and looking in the future is what gives people hope. So it doesn't have to be a big old thing. It's little things that make a difference. And I'm going to talk a lot about hope today, so we'll get to that. So I have this great book that you can see is kind of worn because I looked through it so much. And I actually did a study at one point that had part of it was talking about hope. But this was given to me by a good friend. And it's called The Anatomy of Hope, and it's how people prevail in the face of illness. And it's a great book. And you guys can, look at this today. And I think we probably should get a copy to keep here because it's a great book. And some of the things I'm going to talk about here are taken from that book. So what is hope? You thought about that? What is hope to you guys? If you have hope about something, how does it make you feel? Yeah, it's a little bit of an uplift, isn't it?
Well, it helps look beyond the current conditions you're in. Like,
Yeah.
if you feel like really down, it's not, hope kind of gives you the feeling that it's not permanent and
Right.
that there's a way forward.
Right. Yeah. Takes you a little bit away from where you're currently at. So hope is to look forward with desire and reasonable confidence. It's to believe, desire, to trust. That's a big one. To trust that there's something else there. There's something beyond where I am right now. It's a feeling of wanting something to happen and thinking that it could happen, a feeling that something good will happen or be true. A review of 33 studies of patients undergoing cancer treatment found positive associations between hope and quality of life. Quality of life, when you look up the cancer research and hope, quality of life is just everywhere, everywhere. So, and that's really all we want, isn't it? We want to enjoy our lives. Even if we don't live longer, wouldn't it be great to enjoy as many moments of our life as we can? So that's what hope does. That's what hope does. It improves our quality of life, which means we're enjoying life more. That's huge. Also improves our social support, our spirituality, existential well-being, as well as negative associations. So less feeling overwhelmed by our symptoms that we may be having, less overwhelmed by our anxiety and our depression. Currently not enough, I looked this up, currently not enough literature to show association between hope and reduced mortality from cancer. It's a little complicated to measure hope when you're looking at a concrete outcome like cancer or cardiovascular disease, but there is some literature out there. So why is hope important? So to have hope is to believe in your ability to have control over your circumstances, which is what I talked about earlier. One of the biggest things that you feel when you have cancer or you've been told you have, heart failure is like, whoa, I don't have any control over that. And so you're just left there, right? So that's what hope does. And just even a little hope, like asking somebody, what is their plan for this afternoon? It's a little uplifting. And what it does is it changes your ability to think that you have control, and it gives you more confidence. So hope can only arrive, though, when you recognize there are real options and genuine choices. So if you're in this rumination place, or you're talking to a friend who's in this rumination place and they're just spiraling down, helping them by asking questions, helping them realize that they have real options about even today. They have options about how they want to do things, when they want to do those things. It helps you to realize you're no longer entirely at the mercy of forces outside yourself, that you have some control. True hope is not unrealistic. So when I talk about hope and cancer, I'm not talking about the doctors or you or somebody telling somebody that, oh, you're going to get through this. Everything's going to be fine. No, true hope is a place that comes from the truth about things. So yes, it could be that you're going to get radiation for 6 weeks and you're going to feel lousy, but what else besides that? What else about the radiation? Helping people to see the other story that may be there by just sitting with them, by hearing their own stories. We're going to talk more about that. I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself. Truth and hope can reside in that middle ground. So what gives people hope? Anything that strengthens them and helps them notice their sense of competence. So even if you go to visit them or for yourself, if you notice that today, even though you were so fatigued and you were throwing up from the chemotherapy, that you took a shower and you washed your hair, that shows that you have some strength and you have competence. You're able to do things for yourself. So start with little things. Also, I think I talk about this further down, but asking people if they're just not able to talk about anything that they're doing currently, asking them, oh, it is there. The very last thing I have up there, look back at your life. What have you done in the past to get through really hard times? How have you dealt with a crisis in your life in the past? Everybody's dealt with a crisis in their life in the past. We all got through it, right? We're all here. So how did you get through it? Just asking you that question, it causes you to remember and get in touch with all the strength and competence that you have, right? And then it reminds you it's there, and you can take the next step and use it to get through this crisis that you're currently having. So the other thing that helps is experiencing acts of love, goodness, and kindness. If you have friends come visit you and you can tell that they love you and that they see your goodness and that they're kind to you, that means that you're of value, doesn't it? And it helps you feel of value. So the cancer didn't choose you because you're a terrible person. It was a random thing. So you are of value. Having a good relationship with a close person. And it turns out I've talked to people that have had cancer, and sometimes the people that they get really close to and that really get them through the cancer is not always the person that was their best friend before. Sometimes it's just somebody else that had the time and maybe had some empathy about it, had a better understanding about it, that just went and sat with them, visited with them once a week. That's the person that kind of got them through. So it's kind of can be a random person that ends up being that person for you. It's important for people to feel they have the possibility of achieving partial meaningful goals. So it could be that, you know, what's of value to you is to go, maybe what before you had the cancer, your goal was to go on a trip to France with your children. So maybe that's not a possibility anymore, but maybe you could have your children come and visit you and you could have a weekend together. You know, that's a huge uplifting, important, meaningful goal, you know. So sometimes, you know, the goals change, but they can still fill you with that sense of hope and competence. Having a positively assessed life, asking people to share some stories of their life with you. You know, what's the funniest thing that happened to you when you were in high school? What did you get in trouble for in high school? Or what was your favorite thing that happened when you were working? What's the funniest person you ever worked with? You know, those kinds of things that just trigger stories to come out from people. Having a spiritual practice or support is helpful for some people, not for others. And once again, being able to notice their own strengths. When you work on your strengths, you become stronger. When you focus on your weaknesses, you become weaker. So if you're sitting there thinking, oh, I didn't even have energy to, like, you know, take a shower today, to call a friend, that just creates the fact that I'm weak, I'm weak, I'm weak. So, you know, asking people questions so that they notice their strengths, doing little things so that you begin to think that you are strong. And saying to people, I admire your ability to, whatever it is that truthfully you admire about them. Everything has to be true. It can't be flattery. It's got to be truth. Asking them, can you name 3 traits that you admire about yourself? And if they aren't able to, be ready with 3 traits that you can share with them that you admire about them. And we already talked about the last one. Help the individual to notice their self-worth by appreciating what is good in them. Sometimes people give up on hope because they don't feel a value. And we talked about this already. They may feel something bad about them because they got cancer. They may feel bad and weak and feel less deserving of health and happiness. So genuine praise, acts of genuine praise creates hope. Don't use flattery, express your love and affection. Having long-term or short-term goals will help them feel like they've achieved some life purpose, like they're moving forward. This is the important part, not always hoping for a cure, but can hope for no suffering, could hope for time and quality time with family and friends, bucket list items, different things that they can hope for. Individual personal goals. Acknowledge and support the person where they are right now. There's no right or wrong way to go through this. And as I've said repeatedly, listen intently. Sometimes that's all you need to do. It helps people, for just listening helps people feel like they're important and of value. What do you need right now, right at this moment? Be with them where they are, not where you want them to be, where they are. Believe in their dreams, no matter what they are. I had a friend who actually passed away from cancer. She was young, and I made a mistake, and I'm going to share with you. And she was at the last, you know, she was on hospice, and she was getting ready to be transported by ambulance to a private plane to go back to Georgia, where she was originally from, and die there, you know, with family. And that's where she was going to be buried. And so it was clear to me in my head that this was the end stage, you know, and that she was probably going to die within the next 24 hours. And, you know, it was pretty clear to everybody. And so when I went to talk with her, I can't remember the exact question that I asked her. You can tell I'm stressed by it because it wasn't my best moment. But I said something to her about, you know, is there anything that I can do in the future, you know, to help your son and your husband or something like that? And she just looked at me, and even though she was so weak and, you know, could hardly speak, she said, I'm not dying, Sharon. I said, that's right, you're not. So it makes me tearful, but it's hard, you think that you're with them, but people are in different places than you are a lot of the time. And she was in a completely different place than I was. I was trying to be helpful, but I wasn't. But I switched right away. As soon as she said she wasn't dying, I said, that's right. So it's hard. So you have to be willing to give up the life you plan and instead greet the life that is waiting you. That's true for all of us, isn't it? I love this quote. Oh, I wanted to throw in, there's challenges encountered by caregivers. The role of the caregiver always is physically, emotionally, socially, and financially demanding. We forget about the caregivers, but they can go through the similar stresses as a person who has cancer, emotional exhaustion, feeling like they're not their own person anymore, feeling like they're not accomplishing anything, feeling burned out, depressed, anger, all the same things as people. Rob's over there going, it's draining just hearing about caregivers. So it's important for caregivers to take care of themselves. There's our support groups in that thing that I was passing out for caregivers, getting exercise, having a friend you can talk to about your own feelings. So summary, provide practical help, offer to go to appointments, etc. Listen to their concerns, their hopes, their dreams, be able to say nothing and just be with the person, talk honestly about your feelings, be around them, ask what would be helpful, and support the person in having hope. And then I just wanted to mention also, not on there is, there are supportive services, palliative care, and hospice that are available for everyone. And then this is just to remind me to tell you about these cancer resources, which you've all seen. And I'm also going to pass out this resource sheet, or I'll just leave it over here. You can pick it up on your way out. And these are just some nice little words to support the person and encourage hope. So just, little reminders of things you can say when you're sitting with somebody or to say to yourself. Okay, any questions?
That's a deep topic.
Yeah.
What it did is it conjured up thoughts and memories of being there when my wife was going through uterine cancer, chemotherapy, radiation, and surgery, and recovery. And then my brother, older brother, he dealt with leukemia.
Wow.
So, yeah.
Yeah, that's why you're sitting over there going like this. Yeah.
Little bit,
Yeah. Oh, I bet.
or at least just as you were talking about it, just conjured up thoughts of what happened.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
Boy, all of that. Very, very deep.
It is for me, just remembering, my friend that was going off to die, just remembering that moment it's hard. It's just hard.
But both, but one or the other of both cancers were happening right around the same,
Oh, man.
within a year of each
That must have been so rough.
other. Yeah, I don't know exactly how they were treated. I tried to find out without saying the inappropriate things
Yeah.
that you mentioned, which I thought about in my head, and I know that's not gonna come up. No, so your wife is talking to, no,
Yeah.
that's not gonna come
Right.
up.
So
Wow.
sometimes we don't say anything, but just being there is probably the most important thing because it helps people feel of value. That's it. Any other experiences anybody's had or wants to share? Yeah.
When I was diagnosed, I didn't really have much of a reaction. I just accepted it. I wasn't in any pain or anything.
Yeah.
It didn't get bad until I started cleaning. And then I got very depressed because I was so sick.
Yeah.
But the actual first diagnosis, I just was,
Yeah. Yeah. And everybody's different, aren't
Yeah.
they? Right. And then once you started feeling lousy, that's when it hit you. Yeah. So it's more that how you feeling
rather than the fact.
than the fact was important to you. Yeah. How did you get through that when you were feeling depressed?
Well, I saw a therapist. sometime during that time. But then I just decided I'm going off chemo, I can't take it.
Uh-huh,
And then I felt better. I mean, I felt more positive.
yes, yeah. So having the physical draining is what really affects you,
My mind.
your mind, yes. I think that's very common. Yeah. Thanks for sharing that. And Rob, thanks for sharing yours. Too. Thank you. Anybody else?
My cousin, when he had his total knee amputation and stroke. I remember he was at a, what do you call it, a rehab?
Yeah, uh-huh.
hospital one. And I noticed when my mom, a long time when I was a kid, my mom, when I would leave my mom's, she was at the convalescent hospital, is sometimes there just seems, and I don't know if they're just bored. I don't, I just, I was maybe it's very depressing because there'd be people sometimes in the hallway outside their room doorway. And they just look so alone and sad.
Yeah,
And I don't know. You know, I go, I hope that's never me, or I hope I, would help a family member. I don't do that too, but I mean, I don't know, maybe their family's so far away or something.
Yeah.
But it just.
yeah,
So,
it's hard to see that, isn't it?
yeah,
Yeah.
so I mean, if they were just sitting there. Looking okay.
Right.
But they look so sad with just, maybe it was
Yes.
just my,
They look
Because
so
I
alone,
don't
yeah.
know that.
Mhm.
so I like what you said about visiting, just being there.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, thank you. That's a good thought. Does anybody else need a copy of the resources?
Sharon in chat said she wants.
Linda, could you attach both of those to the
Oh,
Zoom? Yeah, it's a good idea.
Yeah, that's easy. Printing it's harder.
Yeah. Okay, and don't forget to pick up the words of encouragement and little prompts to say to people on your way out. Okay, thank you, everybody, for coming today.
Very good.
Your voice made it.
My voice made it too. Yesterday, it wouldn't have made it.